Test, test. Check, check. And turn it off. See which channel it is. So you can see like which one is getting the noise.
Pull some tree.
The battery died.
What?
The batteries were no good.
Oh no.
That's fine. You can test out. It's already on.
Alright. This one.
This was the one we already tested, so
Oh, okay.
technically the people at home can hear us right now.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and do a mic check on that one.
Wait, this one? I find it doesn't work, Joe. Oh, okay.
There you go.
Great. Alright.
Test, 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 test.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Kate, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. As you may have noticed by now, Jen Berntsen, our music director, is not with us today as she is ill. So there will be some changes in the order of service. Not too many, but Fusion will not be singing the anthem, Sing Me to Heaven. We found this out yesterday afternoon and gathered a wonderful team. So thanks to Pat McDonald at the piano, to Pat and Ann who've brought Fusion together to sing Let There Be Peace on Earth. And we look for all the singers in our congregation to ensure that we do have music today. We ask for your understanding as we do our best to fill this gap. It takes a village. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is the responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all who have ears to hear, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Let us begin by singing our opening hymn, Here We Have Gathered, which is number 360 in the gray hymnal, and Fusion will arrive to help us out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend George Buchanan. I'm the very temporary, just for this week, guest minister. Almost 20 years ago, this congregation was kind enough to ordain me into the Unitarian Universalist ministry. After spending some time in the U.S., I retired and moved back to this area, and I am so very glad to be home. We'll talk more about this later in the service. Yes, very glad to be home. We light our chalice this morning to these words by Marjorie Montgomery. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. Thank you folks very much. And we were struggling to get the chalice lit before, so you did a great job. I want to take a minute to tell a story that I think lots of us would be interested in. This is an old story that I learned, and it's from Robert Munch. Some of you may know Robert Munch's work. And the story is called Murmel, Murmel, Murmel. Has anybody heard of this or heard it? I see some hands. I'm going to do it a little differently than Robert Munch does, but you see if you can spot some differences. To make this work, I need your help. So what you need to do is help me when I say murmel. So can you say that with me? Murmel. And then we're going to say it 3 times. Murmel, murmel, murmel. Very good. Okay, you guys are perfect. So the story begins, and there's a little girl named Robin. And Robin is 5 years old. And Robin is playing in her backyard, and there's a hole there. And Robin reaches in the hole because she hears a noise. She hears a noise in the hole going, murmel, murmel, murmel. She reaches in and pulls out a baby. And the baby says, murmel, murmel, murmel. And Robin says, hey, you baby, I'm only 5 years old. I don't know what to do with a baby. So Robin goes out to try to find somebody who knows what to do with the baby. And first, she meets a man who's on the street, and he's wearing a nice warm sweater that has all kinds of puffy cat fur bits sticking out of it. And Robin says, excuse me, Mr. Man, do you want a baby? Do you need a baby? And the man says, will it have a runny nose? Does it make a mess with its food? Does it cry a lot? And Robin has to say, yes. And you can say that with me. Yes. So the man says, well, then I don't want any baby. And he walks off down the street, and 17 cats jump out of the bushes and follow him home. So Robin's getting a little bit discouraged, but now she sees a woman coming, and she has one of those baby carriages for twins. She has twins in the baby carriage, and Robin thinks, well, let me try her. So she says, excuse me, do you need a baby? And the woman says, no, I'm tired. I have 2 babies, and that's enough for me. And she goes off down the street, and 17 people selling those squishy plastic baby toys run after her down the street. So Robin is getting more discouraged. She sees across the road there's a man sitting on his front lawn all by himself in a lawn chair. And she goes over and she says, excuse me, Mr. Man, do you need a baby? And the man says, will it wash my car? And Robin says, and you can help me with this, no. Will it rake the leaves? No. Will it shovel the driveway? No. And Robin decides that he doesn't, and he said, well, then I don't need any baby. And Robin leaves him alone, and he stays there alone, and nobody comes to see him. So Robin is pretty sad now and pretty discouraged. She sits down by the side of the road, and all of a sudden, a great big dump truck comes rolling down the road and screeches to a halt. And the man driving the dump truck looks out and he says, "What do you have there, little girl?" And the baby goes, "Murmel, murmel, murmel." And Robin says, "I have a baby." And the man says, "What are babies good for?" And Robin says, "Well, they're good for loving and for hugging and for kissing." And the man says, "Well, then that's what I need. I need a baby." And he jumps out of his truck and grabs the baby and runs off down the street. And Robin calls after him, says, "What about your dump truck?" And he looks back and he says, "I don't need any. I have 17 dump trucks. You can have that one." So that's the story of how the baby found a home and how Robin got her very own dump truck. Now, when I tell this story, I have to remind people that, of course, and you guys in the front all know this, that if you ever did find somebody younger than you who was lost, who seemed lost, that you would know to go to talk to a parent or a teacher or somebody like that, or a police officer, somebody you could really trust. So, but we tell fun stories about lost babies. Thank you all very much. Now, I saw Reverend Eric do this last week because I watched on YouTube. Now is the point where all of you young folks who are going downstairs head out, and everybody who's here can make an arch with your arms as the children leave, and anybody who's not right here can also do an arch to make sure that they feel welcome as they go. And Pat's going to play the piece as we go.
Thank you very much, George, for that wonderful story, and Pat. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this time. If you're new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. If you're right here in Worship Hall this morning and would like more information about FirstU, it's available at the welcome table at the back of the pews, where you'll find Jane ready to fill you in. And a note about COVID precautions. Of course, everyone is still welcome to mask as you feel comfortable. And as we know, COVID is still with us. And now here is Phil from our board to highlight our announcements for today.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Phil. Phil just placed 2 stones of celebration in the water for the 2 Climate Champion Awards presented by Ecology Ottawa at their Eco Gala last week. One award was to the late Sherry Watson, who we dearly miss, for her work with FirstU's Environmental Action Group. The other Climate Champion Award was to the Ajashki Project, recognized for environmental stewardship and championing sustainable ecological practices here at FirstU. In accepting the award, facilitator Kaioki White Dog used the analogy of grass dancers at a powwow, flattening the grass for future dancers and ceremonies. Just like we all need to think ahead of the future work in climate change and food security challenges. We congratulate all Ajashki volunteers and participants for their award. Now the second announcement is from the pledge team. A quick reminder, a pledge this fall is a promise to contribute in 2024. While we are grateful for your gifts in 2023, you do not need to have the money in your hand or pocket when you make your pledge. We thank you for your pledges of support for 2024. Announcement number 3. This week, the board received a disheartening email from someone new who joined one of FirstU's groups and reported feeling left out by some in the group, apparently because of how the newcomer self-identifies. The details are unimportant. What counts is that in a follow-up conversation with the newcomer, the board confirmed that the person's feelings were genuine. The board wishes to remind everyone that welcoming newcomers and dismantling barriers to full inclusion is a challenge we each need to remember 7 days a week, whether in this building or not, whether we are wearing our FirstU name tag or not. Let's remember that all of us are part of a Unitarian congregation, endeavoring to live our Unitarian principles. And now here is a message from Carol Card about next Saturday's big annual community fundraiser, the Fall Fair.
Good morning. I'm Carol Card, the Fall Fair Director. Do you remember Transformer toys that can change from a robot into a dinosaur or an airplane? Well, this is the magical week here where our congregational spaces, pretty much the whole building, will transform into a giant marketplace for next Saturday's big Fall Fair sale. Now, I see many Fall Fair volunteers out here. Probably most of the people I'm looking at are Fall Fair volunteers, but we still do need a few more for parking and for 3 of our sales areas. So if you can help out, you can speak to Eva Berenger or myself after, or you can contact us. The email's on the website, or it's fallfair@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And check the website for more details on donations, which you can bring in as of tomorrow. And work will be going on here all week, and hope to see you Saturday. Thank you.
We encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check our Facebook page and our webpage for notices and updates. Our calendar is as full as ever, albeit much of it online. This morning, each of us is welcome. We of any heritage or faith, whatever our burdens, of any culture or race, of any gender or orientation, in anybody, all that we are, today we are all part of this spiritual community. Thank you.
Each week, we pause in our time together in recognition of both the joy and sorrow in our lives and across the world. We honor our celebrations and challenges by placing a stone in a bowl of water. As the ripples extend outwards, we can imagine them continuing beyond the small bowl, out through and past our pews and walls, and out in the larger community of all. We have two stones of sorrows to mention. First of all, as Kate already said, Jennifer Bernstein, our music director, is ill. She and her family are down with COVID, and I hope we will hold them in our thoughts as they heal from this. And we learned that Sarah Craig died suddenly this week. Now, you may have joys and sorrows in your own life, and now is the time to come forward and honor those joys and sorrows by placing a stone in the bowl of water. And this is in recognition that the ones that are not spoken are just as important as the ones we do speak of. So please come forward to now. I understand we don't have any caring cards today, is that right? But there are often caring cards there for you to sign. And this is a way to extend our care on behalf of those who've given much of their hearts to this community. And can I make a personal note that I have received several of these cards over the years, and it's just wonderful to get a card with so many, not everyone, but so many signatures on it. So please, when they have them, sign them. I now invite us all into a time of stillness and reflection. After several moments of silence, Pat will invite us back with the gift of music. take a moment here to honor the sacrifice of those who served and are serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. I start with my own Canadian family. My father had 3 brothers who served overseas in the Second World War. 2 came back and 1 did not. My Uncle David. All I knew of Uncle David was my father's memories and a faded photograph on the wall. 18 years old forever in his Royal Canadian Air Force uniform. He signed up, he said, according to my father, because he wanted to go and fight fascism. This loss deeply affected my father's family. As well, my 2 uncles who did return were changed with scars of body and spirit, and I honor their sacrifice. I also honor the sacrifice of many, many others who served in the Canadian Armed Forces, including more recently in Afghanistan, the Balkans, the Middle East, and other NATO and United Nations missions around the world. It is right and fitting that we took time yesterday to remember, and these few moments today, I honor their sacrifice.
Now I have a few more words of introduction for George, who many of you know. Reverend George Buchanan is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. He's Canadian, as he mentioned, born here in Ottawa. His childhood and teenage years growing up in the Montreal suburbs. George and his family were active in the Lakeshore congregation on Montreal Island in the 1950s and 1960s. In 1978, George moved back to the Ottawa area with his family to pursue his high-tech career. George, his wife Carrie, who's with us today, and their 2 children were active participants in this congregation for several decades. And on a personal note, during that time, I had the great privilege of working with George, particularly on the search committee for a minister of religious education when we hired Liz Benjamin a very long time ago, and in the process became friends of long standing. After decades of high technology work, George decided to become a Unitarian Universalist minister. In 2006, he finished his ministry training and was ordained into our ministry by this congregation. George then moved to the United States for 16 years, where he served in several Unitarian and Universalist ministries in Ohio and Western New York. George and Carrie are retired now and live in Perth, Ontario. They have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren. Their children live in other cities, so most of the time George and Carrie relax at home with their books and papers. They also serve on the staff of one completely spoiled cat. George's ministry interests include congregational development, deep adaptation, and the wisdom of the indigenous nations of North America. I welcome Reverend George Buchanan.
Thanks so much for those kind words, Kate. And our families have become friends and joined together many times over the years. For me, it's good to be home in many ways. First, it's good to be home here in Ottawa First Unitarian. As Kate said, this is the congregation where my wife Carrie and I were active members for many years. Our children attended the Sunday school here and youth programs. I discovered my call to ministry in the rooms and halls of this building, including downstairs. The memorial services for both my mother and my father were held right in this sanctuary Once I was fully trained and educated, in 2006, you all were kind enough to ordain me into the Unitarian Universalist ministry. Throughout my time here, the good people in this congregation have been nothing but supportive and caring, and I deeply appreciate this. And then, as we were planning to move back, I learned that this congregation had called Eric Meter as minister. And this is wonderful, I thought, and still think. Eric and I knew each other a little bit in Ohio, where we served Unitarian Universalist congregations in different cities, in different parts of Ohio. And Eric is someone I like and trust. So I can come home to First Unitarian of Ottawa to have Eric as my minister. Carrie and I have talked about it, and we decided to pledge during the current renewal campaign that Carmen talked about. With this in mind, I will gratefully, and I hope carefully, but still say our congregation and we in what follows. Bear with me. It's good to be home. Just so you know, Carrie and I live in Perth, which is an hour's drive or so west of here. We have family close by there, and we like our apartment and the town. Our cat is still not crazy about it, but she'll live. It's good to be making our home in Perth. In my life, I've learned to deeply value the forests and trees where I live. You can tell this is my tree stole, which I got from an American who is also a tree lover. And the forests and trees in this area feel like home to me. And they've been wonderfully on display these past few weeks, haven't they? In the fall colors. Perth and Ottawa and the Ottawa Valley are in the, scientifically, the Great Lakes St. Lawrence forest region. And our common climax forest trees include maple, hemlock, basswood, and pine. As I said, I've lived in Ohio and in many places, I lived in other places and visited many other places across North America. Lots of wonderful forests and trees out there, some of them absolutely spectacular. And yet these forests never quite felt like home to me. For me, it is home here. It is good to be home in this great northern river valley with all the wonderful forests and trees around us. To speak of these wonderful forests here, it is right and proper and necessary to recognize the claims of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe to these lands. I resonate very deeply with this congregation's work in recognition of this claim and our ongoing commitment to truth and reconciliation. To better understand my own place in this, I turn to the words of Robin Wall Kimmerer. Dr. Kimmerer is an Indigenous author and scientist. In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, she writes, "Some of the wisest of Native," and she means Indigenous, elders still puzzle over the people who came to our shores. They look at the toll on the land and say, the problem with these new people is that they don't have both feet on the shore. One foot is still on the boat. They don't seem to know whether they're staying or not. Now, I don't have one foot on the boat, although several of my grandparents did, but I certainly do see that I probably have one foot still on the moving van, at least in my thoughts and feelings. I'm staying here, but sometimes I need to remind myself of this. I have homemaking work to do. This is the work needed to settle myself, really settle myself into Canada, into the Ottawa Valley, and into this precious land, the land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. It's good to be making a home here. I spoke about our commitment to truth and reconciliation, and we as a congregation have strong plans to realize this and other visions for a better world. However, at times these visions can seem very abstract and far away. You may at this time be feeling down or grieving a loss or feeling unsure about the direction of your life. I know this has been true at times for me, and I appreciate the support I get at such times. If you need this kind of gentle support, I hope and pray you'll find at least some of that here. I heard of a UU congregation, and I don't remember where, who made this very simple commitment. You will be cared for, and you will care for others. By care for others, they mean to include care for the wider community beyond the congregational walls and the planet, as well as care for other people in the congregation. So it's good to have a congregational home where we care for others and where we find caring hearts around us when we're feeling down. It's good to be home in Canada. We lived 16 years in the US, in the Cleveland area of Ohio, and I have many good American friends and colleagues, people I care about deeply. And yet, as the years passed living in Ohio, I knew in my heart that I was not home, and I wanted to return home. There were lots of reasons, large and small, for this feeling, and I can talk about those another time. For now, I'll just say that I am very fortunate that Carrie and I have been able to return to Canada and make, or perhaps remake, a home here. These days of remembrance remind us that great sacrifices have been made to protect our Canadian freedoms. I also believe that the Canada we dream of, the Canada we envision, is a place not only of freedom, but of peace and justice for all. Recent events remind me starkly of our failures in this regard. The Canada of peace and justice I want does not have schools with unmarked graves for children. We've been away, and so I'm still not used to this. Maybe you folks more are, but I just, never again will that happen. Rather, the land of peace and justice I want, the Canada I want, will see Indigenous families raising their children in safe and loving homes, as all children should be. These Indigenous children will have full opportunity to flower and mature and be all they can be, as all children should. With this in mind, I make two commitments to this First Unitarian congregation. First, I stand in support of the ministry of Reverend Eric Meter. I want Eric to be my minister. Second, I will do what I can to help move forward the truth and reconciliation work of this congregation and community. The path to the peaceful and just Canada we want and the congregation we want takes us straight through and further into this work. Now, I'm 70 years old and retired with health challenges. I don't know if you all heard my knee crack when I tried to sit on that bench over there, but therefore my contribution must necessarily be limited. That said, it will be good to work in whatever small way I can to make our congregational home better. It's good to be home in so many ways, and particularly in this congregation. I hope and pray this congregation will continue to be a place where we comfort and support one another, a place where our vision of peace and justice fills our hearts, and a place where we work together with those among us and around us to fulfill this vision. In other words, a true congregational home. May it be so.
Thank you very much, George, for your wise words, helping us reflect on the value of home as our fusion choir and a guest singer arrive on stage here to sing "Let There Be Peace on Earth." This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We've been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. I now invite the ushers to come forward with the baskets. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among the pews. Wherever you are, you're invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, and loving one another. Just before our final hymn, George will say a few words of introduction. It is actually number 348 in the hymnal. There was an error in the order of service. I also have a request from the Fall Fair people that as you leave, if you could bring the hymnal from your pew and a few from around you to the office at the end of the service. That'll help us get ready for next Saturday. Thank you. We'll now sing "Guide My Feet," following some words of introduction by George.
As Kate said, this is 348 in our hymnal. Guide My Feet, I chose this because I like it. I like the feelings that it evokes and the words that it has for coming together at the end of a service. It is also important to remember that this comes out of the African American spiritual tradition, and this was cultivated and founded by people during the Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras after the American Civil War. So these were people who were struggling to make their way. These were African American folks who were struggling to make their way forward through the barriers imposed by Jim Crow and Reconstruction. And I think the important element to this is that they were working in community. They were striving to have a community that worked on finding freedom and realizing their visions. So I would invite you to put your hearts into this one and sing for our community. Bring it forward. Please rise in body or in spirit as you are able.
I'll do the chalice, then I do Spirit of Life.
Fusion Choir is staying up here to help us with Spirit of Life. But before we do that, let me just take a personal moment to thank some folks. And there are too many volunteers for me to thank, but let me at least remember Jen Bernstein, who, even though she's not here, gave me wise guidance in preparing for the service and organizing it. Jody McIntosh, who gave me guidance on how to tell stories and how things work here and how the children leave. And finally, to my friend Kate, who did an enormous amount of work and then rework and then work again to bring you the service that we've enjoyed today. So thank you, Kate. We extinguish our chalice, and to do that, let's hear these words. Would you like to be our chalice extinguisher? It's all right, don't worry. Just blow it up. Thank you very much. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be seated, everyone. I close with these words of benediction. May we bless one another and keep one another and make our faces to shine upon one another as we go in peace.
Hello, everybody. Everybody, this is the first chance you get to transform the church into a sale. All the books go to the office. If you can, take your hymn book to the office. Rule, thank you.
I did mention it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.